My name is Leilani Ganser. I'm going to be talking to you about a research project I did assessing the bird population just down the road at Kennesaw Mountain. Before we begin, I'd like to begin with a little anecdote. I think that we've all heard the colloquialism, a canary in a coal mine. The term came from back a couple years ago when miners went down into the coal mines and they didn't have the tools to assess the toxins in the air. They would bring a canary with them. And if the canary passed out or died, they knew that the air wasn't safe to breathe and they had to get out of there. We're going to be talking about that. I worked for the National Park Service over at Kennesaw Mountain National Battlefield Park. It was a really fantastic internship. I was doing anything on a day-to-day basis, from organizing the artifacts back in our museum to I even helped somebody find a grave that had been lost to time back in the Civil War. I was with 4 different mentors, all of them national park rangers, and I really learned a lot from them, and if anybody's interested, you can ask me about that at the end. For a little background before we begin, there are a couple of terms that I need to define. Throughout the presentation, there will be pictures of birds. This one in particular is the cerulean warbler. It is the rarest bird at Kennesaw Mountain, and I actually got to see one on my first day there. The first word is bioindicator. A bioindicator is a species, an individual, a community, or a process that helps to alert somebody of the health of an ecological community as a whole. The second word is biodiversity. Biodiversity is the variance of species and individuals in an area. And the last one is urbanization. And urbanization simply is the moving of people from rural to urban areas. So the basic premise of my experiment was to see whether or not the biodiversity, specifically of the avian population at Kennesaw Mountain, was correlated with the urbanization of the Atlanta metropolitan area. And with the Atlanta metropolitan area, I was working with the 10 core counties, which I'll go into further later. So a bit of personal motivation. My 2 passions are ecology and community organization, and this was a perfect way to meld the 2 of those. Birds are very important. They help to increase genetic diversity through seed dispersal with flying birds, and with wading birds, they can pick up fish eggs on their feet and spread them throughout the area. The other thing is birds are bioindicators. We talked about bioindicators before, and the best example of birds telling the health of a system is with the DDT scare of 1972. Those eggs that I just pointed to are eagle eggs. Back in 1972, DDT, a pesticide, was just released and it hadn't really been tested, so we didn't know the full effects of it in the environment. And what we ended up seeing was that more and more the eagle population was disappearing. And what the DDT was actually doing to the eagles is it took away a chemical that they needed to produce in order for their eggs to be strong. So when eagles would sit on their eggs, they would crush them. And that was one of the ways that we saw that DDT wasn't healthy for us, and we can mimic that with the health of the bird population today. In the National Park Handbook for new recruits, biodiversity is considered fundamental. Biodiversity is important because the more diverse a community is, the more productive it is. Every species in an ecological system has its own role to play, and the more species you have, the more efficient you're going to be. The other thing is that Atlanta is the fastest growing city in all of America. And there haven't been a lot of studies to show whether or not we're urbanizing in a healthy way. And I wanted to study that a little further. So the National Park Service does an assessment of their parks each year. It's called the State of the Parks Report. And this is actually available to anybody if you're interested online. In the State of the Park Report, they look at their resources, natural and otherwise. And in the most recent report, the one done in 2013, their bird population was assessed as being in good condition based on species occurrence and diversity. This is actually a screenshot from the report. Now, Kennesaw Mountain Park is a wonderful place to birdwatch. It was named the best place to birdwatch this side of Mississippi, and it was recently named a globally important bird area by the Audubon Society because of its species diversity. It boasts over 206 bird species. One of the other things that was measured in this report was the anthropogenic light and noise. That's anything light and noise produced by people. And what they actually found out was that the noise and light levels were too high. They said this was mainly from Fulton County, but they also get 100,000 people going through the park by car every single day. The effects of that on the animal resources were interrupted hibernations, interrupted sexual reproduction cycles, and even interrupted health. And even in the human population living in the area, as well as the animal population, they were seeing stress reactions and things of the sort. I'd just like to highlight this one more time. In the National Park report, based on species occurrence and diversity, the bird population there was said to be in stable, good condition. There is a similar study to mine done in New Delhi in India. What they did was they measured a biodiversity index of the bird population there, and they compared it on a longitudinal scale to the urbanization patterns of the city. And this is an image from the 2 years. And the bird population diminished throughout the study, and they attributed that to as urbanization increased, there was less and less area for the birds to live. And you see here the wetland is increasingly diminishing. And this is mainly due to something called impermeable surfaces, which are asphalts, concrete, roads, sidewalks.